You can see me? Okay, perfect. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Hi, my name is Zoe Gary, and this is my wonderful partner.
Jenny Norris Lane.
I have several roles in our denomination. Professionally, I am a fundraiser for our theological education for the Theological Education Fund, which is our denomination's um, fund that supports our 12 seminaries here in the US. So I get to travel around and connect with our partner churches and get to talk about theological education for a lot of my time during the year. And I'm also a board member of UKirk.
And UKirk National, I'm the executive director, and we are the organization across the PCUSA that supports, equips, and empowers collegiate ministry and ministry with young adults across the church. And one of the reasons that Zoe and I are so excited about this topic is I served in college ministry and oversaw our vocational discernment program at the university where I served, which is a Presbyterian college. We have 49 now, just so you know. And then Zoe was at a ministry in New Orleans.
Mhm. Great. So today, what we're going to do in this workshop is first, we're just going to open up with a little scripture. We'll begin with Jeremiah and just kind of have some thoughts about that. Then we'll go into some self reflection, and then we're going to go into best practices. So we wanted to have some moments today where you are getting to reflect on your own discernment and what that looks like, but then also move into how to facilitate discerning conversations in your church, whether that's with youth or young adults or with your church and your community. Hi, welcome. Come on in. So let's that's what it's going to look like. So let's begin. One of my favorite images of the Trinity is the voice, the breath, and the word. And so coming in, I'd like us to just take some good cleansing breath as we maybe uncross your legs, maybe do a little scoot in your chair. Best scoot. All right. Our scripture today comes from Jeremiah chapter 1, verses 1 through 9. Hi, Daniel. Come on in. Hear now the words of the Lord. The words of Jeremiah, son of Hilkiah, one of the priests at Anathoth in the territory of Benjamin. The word of the Lord came to him in the 13th year of the reign of Josiah, son of Amon, king of Judah, and through the reign of Jehoiakim, son of Josiah, king of Judah, down to the 5th month of the 11th year of Zedekiah, son of Josiah, king of Judah, when the people of Jerusalem went into exile. The word of the Lord came to me, saying, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. I appointed you as a prophet to the nations. Alas, sovereign Lord, I said, I do not know how to speak. I am too young. But the Lord said to me, do not say I am too young. You must go to everyone I send you to and say whatever I command you. Do not be afraid of them, for I am with you and will rescue you, declares the Lord. Then the Lord reached out his hand and touched my mouth and said to me, I have put my words in your mouth. See, today I appoint you over nations and kingdoms to uproot and tear down, to destroy and overthrow, to build and to plant. The word of the God for people of God. So I have been obsessed with discernment for about a year and a half. In my role, like I mentioned, I came into fundraising for our seminaries, and I was sitting through this presentation, and it was dark. Just the amount of students that we were seeing not in our seminaries, and just understanding the big shifts in the church. And I was sitting there trying to think, okay, what is going on? Why are these big shifts happening? And so I spent 6 months interviewing a bunch of churches, talking to pastors, talking to associate pastors and youth leaders. And I just wanted to see kind of what was going on, what kind of conversations around discernment, what curriculum of discernment were we having. And most 95% of the conversations ended with, we only function on self referral. But how many of you are in Christian education or went to seminary and you had someone who supported you, who told you, I think that you should go to seminary? Almost every single one of us have had someone who had these deep, deep conversations with us, who saw something and called it out in us. And so I really want us to have more of these intentional conversations. And so, what I'd like for us to do is I'd like to just, we're all in these small groups right here, to sit and kind of have some conversations, introduce yourself, say your name, your pronoun, and then move into why you wanted to be part of this conversation. And if you have something that you are discerning, if you could share that with your group. So turn.
Fine.
And the people online will be moving into breakout groups. Any
By their
other
pastor.
share outs for why you chose this workshop or wanted to have deeper conversations of discernment? Is it something that you are already having, or is this kind of a push into starting to have these deeper conversations? A mystery.
Well,
I love
I will
it.
share that my congregation is going through a very big discernment process. So I'm really curious about what you talk about and how it applies to an organization as opposed to just an individual.
I love that. That's great. Yeah. So if everyone can see, if you flip over the scripture, we're going to talk about four different types of discernment. So we're going to go over. Yes, I do. Yes, of course. Okay, sounds good. So the first one we're kind of going to go over together, and have some kind of step-by-step conversation on what an intentional conversation and a spontaneous discerning conversation can look like. And then we will move into kind of the difference between these group discernments and one-on-one discernments, that you're wondering about, Karen. Yeah. So, for the intentional and spontaneous conversations, I've had a really hard time saying the word spontaneous for the past 2 days. So please, be gracious. Okay. There's these are some of the most important conversations that we have. Sometimes these discerning conversations, we need to set the scene. All right, we need to come prepared. It's a very intentional conversation that we're having with our youth, with our young adults, with our friends, with our families, with our church. There is a convener. All right, there has to be someone in charge of the conversation. That's really, really important for these intentional conversations, because not only do you have to have someone in charge and convening it, but you need someone who can set the space. All right. The space is just as important as the conversation. All right. Where are you having this space? Is it in your office? How does your office looking? Did you intentionally prepare it for that conversation? How is the seating? Is there a table between you? Is it in between chairs? And that is also like reflective of what kind of the relationship that you have with that person. Whereas a spontaneous conversation, it's co-constructive. It's happening just out of the blue. All right. You can lead the conversation, but when these things are spontaneous, it's really, really important to have the other person also leading the conversation. The conversation has an intended direction for intentional that everyone knows beforehand. I think that that is something that is really important, especially when having these big conversations that are so intimate, right? Our discernment, our call is very intimate. And knowing that you're going to talk about it beforehand is really important because you want to think about it. You want to plant that seed and have the person that is having this conversation be able to have a chance to articulate themselves well. And sometimes in these spontaneous conversations, which can be really, really important and so fruitful, they're not as thought out. And they can be an invitation to an intentional conversation. But letting someone know, whether that's the preparation of thoughtful questions, whether that's literally sending them the questions that you're going to engage with, or just letting them know the topic or the amount of time that they have, it's really important. And spontaneous conversations, the conversation can go anywhere. It doesn't just have to be on that. And so paying attention to the flow of the conversation is really, really important. And now Jenny's going to share something about thermostats and thermometers, which is my favorite thing in the world.
Okay, what I have learned recently is that not everybody understands what a thermostat is, aka I asked the 20 and under crowd. And I was like, do you know what a thermostat is? And they were like, and I said, the air conditioner or the heater? And they're like, oh, yeah. That thing that right, that you turn. And I said, what's the purpose of a thermostat? So what is the purpose of a thermostat? To regulate, right? To set the temperature, right? How many of you are rooming with somebody this week? How many of you have also learned that even though you've been really good friends with somebody, you didn't know that they like a different temperature than you, right? So what's a thermometer do? It measures the temperature, right? And so one of the images that was shared with me through a book that I'll offer to the group later is that there are times where you, as a leader, will set the temperature for the conversation, right? And when there is, I'm going to just go with the church, for instance, that is discerning the future. As Zoe says, with intentional conversations, there's a lot of preparation often to think about what it is being a thermostat. And how do you set the right temperature for people to feel comfortable? But the other part of this is to ask the part of discernment individually.
Hi, Darren.
Is how people are being tossed to and fro. How many of you have ever had anybody come to you that has a big question that they're trying to figure out, right? And they're all over the place. One of the things to talk about with them is sort of like, oh, it feels like you are
Just got a picture
responding
on chat
to
from
all the chaos, right?
Michelle
And so
and
what
MJ.
what does it mean for you to sort of
Yeah, they're in a
say,
particular
okay,
workshop
where's
together.
God
Not
calling?
where I
Where
am.
am I centered in this, right? So are you receiving the temperature of all the stuff that's going around, or are you trying to set the temperature? And so the thermostat and thermometer, with young adults and with leaders, often leaders find they're reacting to other people's temperature. right? And so, but that's just an interesting image to offer the people that you're having a conversation with, especially in a culture that's running a little hot these days. And so, one of the interesting things that came out, I was at the Montreat College Conference recently, and in this conversation about call, in this conversation about vocation and discernment, one of the conversations that was most helpful is to separate the temperature outside and the temperature inside, like personally, right? Because just as we know, I'm from Texas. Let me just say the temperature here, although I will say it's going to be as cold tomorrow when I get home that it is here, but right. But so when you think about sort of thermostats and thermometers, I think there's a lot of different ways that you can think about it, but there's an individual and how they're doing and what does it mean to offer some observations about, well, it seems like you're really responding to XYZ. So where are you? And then, but also to think about what's happening externally and then where the person is in their sort of social and cultural location. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So what we'd like for you to do is two things. We'd like you to reflect on where do you think you naturally are? Are you the thermostat or are you naturally a thermometer? How are you usually taking in the temperature? Are you setting the temperature? Are you setting the vibes? Are you setting kind of the curriculum, the conversations? Or are you more naturally a listener or someone who's taking in all the things that are going on around you? So I'd like you to just take a minute to think about what is kind of your natural posture. And then I'd like for you in your groups to talk about the importance of a thermostat and a thermometer in these conversations. So you can see it's a little blank under here. So in your group, lead the conversation of why it's important to be a thermostat in an intentional conversation, and why it's important to be a thermometer in spontaneous conversations.
Okay.
Do we
Bye.
need to be thermostats in intentional conversations? And I'll hand you the mic for the people online. Come on. Who can do it?
Yeah, that's good. Each table is going to get the answer, just so you know.
Well, I'll speak for myself. I'll let the rest of the table speak for themselves. But I'm going to be 69 in September, so um, that's what I'm looking at is what my next move is. So that's why I'm here. But there are a lot of other variables. My wife is 5 years younger, so she's going to want to keep working. And so if she wants to keep working in the small town where we live and the church there wants to keep me around, I could stay there for another, how many years until her retirement date comes up. So, but I still want to be intentional and want this to be a discernment into when I do retire. But I'm going to have to be a little bit more of a thermometer there because there's also some other circumstances. We want to be fairly close to where my wife's parents, who are both 92 now, because a lot is going to be happening with them in the next 2, 3, 4 years. A lot has happened in the last two. So we want to be close and we want to be intentional there. On the other hand, my church knows, because when I came to the church, I said, you can see the expiration date that's printed on the back of my neck. You know what that is. And so I'm not running away from that. And I said, this is kind of the range I'm looking at. So now they're also looking at me and looking at themselves and, whoa, this is who we are now. And I've had some people say to me, you're probably going to be our last, fully installed and called pastor. After you leave, we'll probably have to sell the manse. They've already played out this scenario. So I think I can be for that church more of the thermostat and maybe help guide them in that. conversation with the presbytery,
going on,
with that
yeah.
leadership as well. So yeah, I'm both, I guess.
Sure.
Yes. So, in a similar vein, one of the distinctions we made is, all of this is so contextual and it's so situational based on the situation. So, like if I'm at a Presbytery committee meeting, I'm functioning different in discernment than I am moderating a session meeting as the pastor. Where I believe as a pastor, I have to be the thermostat much more often because I have to honor the pastoral relationship with everyone on the board, right? And that's where the regulation comes in. Uh, in a different context, at a regional meeting or whatnot, I don't have that responsibility of making sure everyone feels connected to the pastor. So it really, switching gears is important, but it also can be hard in like a session meeting to get from being the thermostat to taking stock. And one other thing that Anne mentioned at the very beginning is, do we need to be the thermometer at the beginning of anything for you can't regulate without taking stock of your own internal temperature. So that kind of needs to be step one to get to regulating, or it's not going to be successful. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, so what I'm hearing is that relationships are one of the foundational things that determine whether we're going to be a thermometer or a thermostat, and that we're both, and we navigate that all the time. What are some of the things that help you decide whether to be? So we have the examples of being in presbytery or being leading the session. What are the things that help us decide whether we're going to be a thermostat or a thermometer? Or is that a no? Okay. I thought you were lifting your hand to get the mic. Oh, okay. That's yeah.
Well, one of the things that we were talking about at our table is that it depends on what kind of person you're talking to. And the example that I gave is that my cousin, who I've known all of her life, had said on Facebook, she posted a list of all the problems that she has as an introvert. And I said, since when are you an introvert? She says, well, forever. I said, no, you're not an introvert, because when we have she says, no, you're my cousin. But the other 98% of the population, I'm an introvert. Oh, I didn't know that. So it kind of depends. You have to, I think, before you want to be a thermostat or a thermometer, you kind of have to figure out, where is this person at?
Well, we'll go like this.
This was a skill set that I worked very intentionally on throughout chaplaincy training at the hospital, because they really want you to do both as a chaplain simultaneously at all times, right? You're kind of consistently going back and forth between trying to like set the tone and be intentional about how you show up into a space while also just being present to whatever the person needs and listening to them, which feels like a tricky thing to navigate in one-to-one meetings. And then I also think too, when I'm often most a thermostat is I work with youth, and I will tell myself that like in certain circumstances, they really just need to be heard. That's all that needs to actually happen. Like all I need to do is just let them know that I've heard them, even if like things that they've had to say aren't necessarily going to change outcomes, right? In our discernment, right? Because there are things they don't understand. There are things that they're not there yet. But that they have been legitimately heard and honored is sometimes enough to get them to like come down, take a breath, and be ready to like have discussion. But you can't get there until you've done that first. So pass over.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, for me, and some of our discussion was more about the details determine where you're starting at. So are you starting as the thermostat or are you starting as a thermometer? But sometimes the real discernment process is recognizing that if you've started as the thermostat, you have to switch to thermometer to see if you're being effective or not. And if you started as the thermometer, you need to switch to the thermostat to see, if this person came in hot, am I raising their temperature or am I lowering it? So sometimes the discernment is after you've started, not where you've started, from my experience. Because you're right, the situation sometimes demands where you start. But we think that we are either the thermostat or the thermometer, but a thermostat doesn't work without a built-in thermometer, right? Because it needs to know the furnace kicks in, it's got to stop sometime when you reach the temperature, right? So, yeah, so that's kind of, yeah.
You've seen the flaw in our example, Karen.
And one that I believe is what you need is the wisdom to know the difference between
Mm,
thermostat and thermometer. So you've done a nice job of highlighting that for us. And also, I think in response to the comment about, I think it was youth in particular needing to be heard, this person says that most people need to be honored and heard, and we need to remember that.
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. That these conversations, one of the gifts that we have is that we are constantly around people. Not a lot of people get that gift. We're some of the few people that really have access to hundreds of people every week. And it really is a gift and a responsibility that we move into. Okay, so some next we're gonna oh, actually, um, n- now you're gonna yes. Yes. So next, what we're going to do is we're going to share some questions from leading lives that matter, that happen, that are deep and start with these really good conversations for having these intentional one-on-one conversations. But some of them also can move into the group conversations as well.
One of the things that I have noticed in my own discernment history, as well as working with other people, is that often there is a place in discernment that we get stuck because we ask the questions that we know to ask. Has that ever been your experience? What am I going to do? 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 Um, and this book, this is an old version of a book called Leading Lives That Matter that's edited by Mark Schwinn and Dorothy Bass. And I don't know, some of you may know Judy Ferguson. She and I often taught out of this book. But one of the things that we found in our congregation and in one-on-one pastoral relationships is that sometimes asking slightly different questions can begin to open up a conversation. And so the questions that they ask are some lives more significant than others? Why do you, how do you hear that question? Are some lives more significant than others? What do you think that is getting at? Huh? Well, right, but what image came to mind? Like when I asked that question.
People who live lives in which they themselves feel purposeless or meaningless, where, gosh, I wish my life mattered to something, but I'm sort of stuck in this small town I can't get out of, or I have $1 billion of student debt, so I've got to work this job to pay that off. But what I would really like to do is a not well remunerated, but personally fulfilling and possibly socially serving vocation.
Right. So what I appreciate that you just shared is there's a lot of different things. Socioeconomic class, social location. Are you in a small town? Are you in a big town? Are you in an important job, aka attorney, doctor, or for I've been in a conversation with a gentleman in midlife who lost his job. And so then the thing is, I've got to find a job that makes this X number of amount of money. But he really wants to be a school teacher, right? So are some lives more significant than others? Yeah.
We're treated right now.
Yeah, absolutely. The way immigrants are treated right now. And what does it mean to deeply say from our Christian tradition that we are each and all made in the image of God? And then to understand ourselves in community together, that is what does it mean to frame every question that we have as, are some lives more significant than others? No. Are all, because then it sort of shifts. And then the question is, okay, so what are you wrestling with? So number 2, must my job be the primary source of my identity? Had a student that has been a volunteer and a paid part-time staff person at a church for 14 years, but an accountant by trade. And her comment was, because I want to be able to afford to live, and my avocation is serving the church. So, must my job be the primary source of my identity? Is a balanced life possible and preferable to a life focused primarily on work? In my experience with Gen Z, this is a huge conversation right now. I have never been more schooled than by my own children who are like, no, I'm not staying late for that, right? Like it's they have boundaries that it's awesome, except when you want them to do something. Shall I follow my talents as I decide what to do to earn a living? Another subset of this question is, do I have to like my job, or do I just have to do my job? The next one is, to whom should I listen? Can I control what I shall do and become? What is y'all's answer to that? Can I control what I shall do and become? Online folks, what do you think?
Well, one person says these are great questions. I wish I would have been asked before I graduated.
Yeah.
But there's another comment that said, was asking just for a little clarification, and said, like, are we talking about how we put some people up on a pedestal, or how historic figures, for instance, Martin Luther King Jr., have done lots more than I'll ever be able to do? And said the question kind of makes me a little uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Another question. Yeah.
And I would say yes and yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. And part of it is to answer that more fully and not be so cheeky about it. I think unpacking that, you begin to think about all of the cultural messages we get about worth and about impact. And so they do make us uncomfortable, and they should make us uncomfortable, because the reality is that what we see in social media, for instance, right now, and what the images we're bombarded with, they seep into us even when we don't recognize it. And so part of it is, how do we tease that out? So, okay.
There's one more question about your question. I think the last one is, what is control? When you say, can I control who I become or what I do? Like, what do you mean by control?
What do you all think? What is the definition of control? Manage?
Consent.
in terms of agency and constraint. And whenever I teach, I primarily work with seminarians and some undergraduate and high school students. But, the first thing we say when we talk about vocation is that to even be able to reflect on your vocation is a material luxury. A lot of people, indeed, most people just have to figure out how to eat today, tomorrow, and next week. And they don't get to say, whoa, what would I like to do with my one wild, precious life?
Right.
They're just trying to stay alive.
Right.
So I think control is probably leads us a little bit off path, whereas we're talking about how much agency do we have and how do we navigate the constraints on our lives, however capacious or restricted they might be.
Yeah. And so thank you. And we're going to be thinking about agency and constraint here in just a second. And then the last one is, how shall I tell the story of my life? And if you are working with anybody who's had experienced any kind of trauma or woundedness in their life, one of the things that we know about what trauma does is it holds us psychologically in an eternal now. Right. And so then the question becomes one of the healing techniques of working with somebody in trauma. And I need to say, this is also congregations in trauma. I live in Kerrville. We had a flood this summer. Right. The whole conversation is how should we tell the story of our lives about our city and about what happened? Is giving them space to tell a story and then to begin to figure out what their story is. So, but this is not just individuals, because for congregations, the three questions that I think transfer to a communal experience, I think all of them can, but to whom should we listen? Can we control what we shall do and become? And how shall we tell the story of our church life together? And the question is, I don't know about you, but I talk to a lot of congregations across the country, and a lot of it is they're like, we're dying, we're dying, we're dying, we're dying. The church is dying, the church is dying, right? And all they see is what they've lost. And so then the question becomes what Derek says is like, where do we have agency and where are we constrained? So these are some alternative questions that can sort of expand the conversations that we have individually and with groups.
You guessed it. You get to talk to your table again. All right. So right now, what we'd like you to do is thinking about the group and one-on-one conversations. We want you to think about these two very distinct types of conversations that we have. We've talked a lot about one-on-one conversations, but group conversations are also just as important. And we've seen that just now, right? Every single one of you has given some kind of wisdom to this group that has enriched this conversation. This conversation is so much better than Ginny and I just standing up here monologuing, because we wouldn't have had the experience or the wisdom that you all have had. And we do that with our churches. We do that with our families. We do that with our friend groups, with our neighbors. So I want you to turn to your group, and I want you to fill out the chart on the bottom of this page for when we will use group and one-on-one discernment, what group and one-on-one discernment looks like, and how we facilitate them. So. What do we got? Let's fill this out together. When do we use group discernment? Never. When? Session meetings. Kate, thank you. Session meetings. Yes. When else do we use them?
We talked a little bit about knowing if you have the advantage of knowing who you're talking to. Some people do better with a plurality of voices to help them. Some people do not. But if you have I talked about, my daughter, I knew well enough to know she needed to hear more than one voice for a big discernment moment.
Absolutely.
Because I knew my daughter, I knew she needed to hear more than one voice for this discernment moment, but I knew that about her.
Have you guys ever had family meetings?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Somebody online is suggesting youth group planning or worship planning are times for group discernment.
Absolutely. Worship planning, doing that together. It's not just one person, right? You need at least some ushers. You need some music. So, oh, yes.
I know the pastor at my church is a small church solo pastor, and she gathers once a year for 3 days with 4 other solo pastors, and they plan out the year together.
Oh, I love that.
For all of us.
Absolutely. Yeah.
During a crisis.
During a crisis. Absolutely.
Been deciding in which direction tomorrow morning.
Yeah. Right. How many, we all have travel coming up. Have you guys talked to anyone? Should I go early? Should I stay? Or would, yeah.
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 I'm sorry.
Somebody online is commenting that they feel like when you have time, I feel like group discernment is sometimes impossible in an emergency. But if you have time, group discernment can be a great thing so that it takes more time.
Yeah. How about when we use one-on-one? Who's your friend or your partner or your parent that when something's happening, you give them that call? When do you do that? Yeah.
Or that times less or that whole venture meeting or that supported me to other challenging things or kind of decision. I don't want to write out it. I'll hear what they're saying, so I question everything connected to me, like they're gonna give me a ask. Yeah, you might want to hear, but I trust what they're going to contribute.
So when you need someone who you trust, but also who has known you for a while. Yeah. When you need to have a more intimate conversation. Yeah.
Working through interpersonal issues within a congregation as well. Sometimes that one-on-one discernment, understanding being the thermometer for that person, and then the thermostat coming back and helping them to come to a place of calm and understanding. And then we can move forward with a group discussion. So that one-on-one discernment is really important for that as well.
Yeah, when it's a really complex issue and you kind of need to break it down a little bit. Yeah, absolutely. Pastoral care. Absolutely.
We talked about many things at this table, not all of them on this topic, but I am just wondering about the role social media plays in all this, right? Those voices, those mass voices, those anonymous voices that we don't know often present themselves. And I think we need to go to one-on-one and say, I know you've been reading or I know you've been hearing based on what you're telling me, but I do think that there's always going to be an ebb and flow between group and individual and group and one-to-one.
Yes. Yeah, it's a whole world out there. Yeah, Karen.
We have a couple of online comments. So someone says that a good time for one-on-one is when there's a health concern.
Yes.
Um,
Oh, yeah.
and also a comment that when the person will tell you what you need to hear and not just be positive or polite.
Yeah, kind of what she was saying too. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so what does it look like? I mean, we have some examples, but what does it look like? What do all of these have in common for group discernment? More than two people. Kate, again, you are killing this. Okay, it's okay. It's a group, more than two
I
people.
wonder if you need to have some relationship before you enter into this.
Yeah. Yeah, deeply relational and relational beyond um like you have a group identity, right?
Someone online is commenting that they all need a thermostat.
No. Yeah.
Two things. In group discernment, often they need to be decision makers.
Decision makers. I love that.
Or power holders.
Ooh. Stakeholders. Yes. Yeah. Okay. What about one-on-one? What does that look like? So we know that it happens pastoral care. Um, Sometimes when they're like intimate situations, when there's health concern. What does it look like? Setting is more important. Yeah.
If somebody needs to talk to you about kind of their age, maybe not invite them to a public cafe because they don't want to sob in public or whatever.
Yeah. Absolutely. You definitely have way more information in one-on-one, right?
Grace Online is saying that one-on-one is cozier.
Yes.
And that it's someone else is saying it's about creating a safe space for vulnerability.
Higher risk. Wow.
I mean, in the church, we have, especially when we're talking about like one-on-one with minors, with elders, with children, people with disabilities, right? We have a lot of policies in place, kind of probably at all of our churches, about what one-on-one care looks like and what is or is not appropriate for a one-on-one meeting. It is in the setting in the past where we've seen a lot of church hurt take place and church harm has taken place in one-on-one meetings historically. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
Just to build on to what you said, the other challenge with the one-on-one is afterwards, there's no one like if you say something in a group discernment and someone goes, I can't believe that pastor said this, and five people go, they didn't say that. You don't get that in the one-on-one. All of a sudden now it becomes, the gossip circle starts and it's like, I can't believe I went for a meeting and this pastor said this. And then your elders come to you and go, there's no way I said that. So you do have that higher risk after the fact of misunderstanding.
Absolutely. That's a great point. Yeah. So how to facilitate group discernment takes a lot of facilitation. What are some things that we use to facilitate these groups?
Training.
Training, yes.
A facilitator know what that means, right? As they're helping them to discern.
Yes, absolutely. Technology, yeah. I mean, I was waiting for it. Robert's rules.
And I think sometimes it needs an outside sometimes it needs an outside facilitator and not anybody that's within the system. right? How many of you have ever been like, I've said that to you for a decade, and this person shows up and says it, and everybody's like, oh, that's a great idea. And you're like, but sometimes it is really good when you need somebody. What did somebody say? Somebody's going to tell me the honest truth, right? It's better if you can all have a common enemy after they leave. That's what my husband and I, yeah, anyway, had I'm just going to share this a little bit more information you need to know. But in our first year of marriage, we ended up in counseling, and we were deciding about his job and what we were going to do. And because there was a lot of, we hadn't learned to make decisions together yet. And one of the things we realized is that after the second session, we both hated the therapist. Like, we just could not stand him. And then it all magically sort of appeared and worked out. And we said that it really helped to have a common enemy, right? That it works, right? But one of the things then we did is we bounced, like, we pushed back against what they said. He could say it but we couldn't say it to each other. So a facilitator. So maybe not a common enemy, but a nemesis, like Perry the Platypus and Dr. Doofenshmirtz, for those of you.
Absolutely. Yes.
So in our youth group at our church, we actually, I like to think in terms of like how often, and this is true among adults as well, but how often can we co-create and co-facilitate rather than and take a more horizontal approach to like regulating ourselves as a group rather than just me playing the role as in today's terms, like being the thermostat. How can we all be the thermostat? So a thing that we've been doing for years and has really worked effectively is co-creating our agreements as a group before big events. So not necessarily for something like youth group, but if we're going on a retreat or we're going on like a week-long trip or whatever, we work together as a group to come up with our rules essentially. And we do so. What's impressed me over the years is that kids have come up with rules that they want to mutually follow that I would not have even come up with for them on their behalf, which shows me like that they have a sense of integrity and that they care deeply about caring for one another well. And so whenever I get the chance to share that with people, I'm like, try this with your adults, try this with your young adults, even with your kids. It can end up, they feel more empowered because they're naming how they want to show up, how they want others to show up for them, and the type of space they want to be in. So.
And it gives that investment. Like, these are the rules, but that's my rule, and it really helps with the ownership of it. Absolutely. So we have 10 minutes left, if you can even believe it. Oh, I thought it was till 3.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna jump into some things that you can use. We have some links, we have some guides, some activities that you can. What? I don't want to share this. Sorry.
Hey, technology's hard. And
So Jenny's gonna walk us through this, but we want to make sure that we have had conversations, we've mapped out when we use these, when they're important, but we also want to give you actual activities that you can use in groups and in one-on-ones.
And I will preface this to say that all of these were going to be after we talked about the burning bush experience. And the passage in particular about the burning bush, a lot of discernment really requires us to think about who we believe God to be and how God is inviting us to show up in the world. And so Exodus 3, as you're waiting for your flight information, you can, do a little devotional. So one of the things that can be helpful is something called the life career rainbow. And there are roles that we play. This one, and we can send it in a link. We have child's, leisurite, which I think is hysterical, student, spouse, parent, homemaker, worker, pensioner. You could tell it's in England. We don't really talk about pensioners. I guess we could though. And then we have the life cycle. Often, some of the conversations that I have in pretty significant amount of right now are with people who are determining or discerning if they're going to retire. And what will they do after that? Because there's questions about identity. And so one of the things that you can invite a group of individuals to do is to map out some things. And we did this with a group of young adults. And what we realized is that as we were inviting them, we were trying to create another Sunday school experience. And as they did their maps, what you realized is that they were all workers. They were all children because their parents were elderly. They all had children. And so they filled out all of these things, and then you have a conversation about time, right? But at each of the things, sort of at each of the ages and stages, what this has been helpful is for people who are in a certain stage of life, once they realize that a discernment question, which is here, that they put all of the other roles they play in the world also on the table, can often inform, say, a job discussion, right? It can, there was a person in our congregation that was trying to discern if they were going to take this promotion. And then she was like, oh, wait, my parents are elderly. They're moving in with us. Oh, wait, my kids are young, right? And it helped her understand that maybe in 10 years she would want to take this position. But right now, she was called to multiple things in her life, in her community, multiple roles. The second thing that I invite you to think about is 5 Cups of Coffee. It's a group facilitators guide by our siblings in the Methodist tradition, United Methodist Church. And I suggest that you use this with all of your college students that go away to college, and when they come home for break, that you intentionally have 5 cups of coffee with them over their 4 years, or in my case, 6 years of college. You have the God conversation. You have the gift conversation. You have the passion conversation, the spiritual growth conversation, the opportunities conversation, and then there's some bonus conversations. This was designed, though, to work with a group of lay leaders in the church. And their lay leadership system would be similar to our Presbyterian deacons and elders. And so one of the facilitators guide that you can find if you do 5 Cups of Coffee group facilitators guide will show you a way to have these conversations among your leadership. Because one of the things in the Presbyterian Church, at least, is that we at Reunion used to have a lot of intentional conversations about how is God calling you to live as a disciple? How is God calling you to live out your faith in the public square? How is God calling you as a leader, right, in the church? And then it got taken out of our curriculum. Everybody sort of assumed we would have these conversations. So this is a way to begin to get your leadership also to have conversations.
And if you signed up for this, I have sent everyone the worksheets, and there is a hyperlink in the worksheet in the email that was provided. The hyperlink gives you the 5 cups of coffee, but I can share the other stuff as well.
And then here are some other resources to think about and look at, especially for youth, but not only for youth. There's a program called Habitudes, images that form leadership habits and attitudes. And a leader is somebody who solves problems and serves people. But there is one on the art of navigating transitions in life. I have actually also used this with people who are navigating in mid-career a change. And the art of preparing for a career. Again, these are short things. There's faith-based curriculum. There's an art of self-leadership. There's an art, so it's a way to reflect. Part of discernment is knowing yourself, and it's a way for people to begin to know themselves. But they're short, 3 to 5 pages. There are faith-based versions. Social Change Now, a guide for reflection and connection. This is by a person named Deepa Iyer. And it is, she is not Christian, but so I've asked her if I could say this, and she said it's a good comparison. The body of Christ metaphor, we are all part of the body of Christ, we individually members of it. Social Change Now has roles that people need to play for social transformation. And so it can be individual and as an organization.
I was just going to comment that my church spent the whole fall with that. That was our, preaching focus and worship focus every week for 6 weeks. There's an amazing children's picture book that goes with it that I used with it was
We Are the Builder.
Sort of just trying to respond to people feeling like I want to do something. I want to be active in making the world a little better right now, and I don't know how and what. And it was a really wonderful tool.
Yeah. And so often in discernment, it's not that we need to do something, but what do we do and how do we align with our gifts? Callings, 20 Centuries of Christian Wisdom on Vocation. This is a really dense book, but it's also really helpful if you need a Bible study on calling and vocation, because it's really helpful. Belovedness is a great book for for giving to your high school seniors as they go off to college. And grounding them in their identity as God's beloved. And how does that identity inform the other choices that you make? We Can Be Brave by Bishop Booty, and then Leading Lives That Matter. There's an updated version. And we've had congregations that have done Leading Lives That Matter as a Sunday school class or a midweek program.
Okay. Thank you all for joining us today in this discussion of